All right, let's take you to East Africa then for a sense of some of the expectations. SADC Leaders Summit, as we've been telling you, their summit gets underway in Durban tomorrow with regional integration, peace and security and economic development high on the agenda. But what does Tanzania, as a powerhouse in East Africa, what do they want to see coming out of the summit? Let's cross live to our correspondent now, Isaac Lukando, who joins us now from Tanzania. Good evening to you, Isaac. I imagine that ahead of the many meetings that took place in Durban last week, the SADC Council of Ministers and other meetings, as well as the SADC Heads of State meeting, that is summit that is taking place tomorrow, there's a lot of chatter around the expectations of a country like Tanzania. What is the word in terms of the priorities that Tanzania would like to see and champion at this year's summit?
Well, Tarani, we've had an opportunity to hear from the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Deputy Foreign Minister, in terms of the expectations or the priorities that they laid out at these preliminary meetings. And from it, we glean that the country has a particular focus. Its message to the SADC summit is that the region should focus on prioritizing specific projects that have high impact. And this is because of the meager resources that Tanzania deems the region has, and therefore it's calling for countries in the Southern African Development Community to focus on particular projects that it feels may be able to yield the best results given the amount of funding, the dwindling funding that has been experienced in the region for various reasons. The other thing that it's calling for is the building of infrastructure, key infrastructure. There's also been a discussion as well as building regional value chains, and from that being able to reduce dependence on imports, something that Tanzania feels that the region has been subject to in recent times. And from that, build intra-trade. We heard from South Africa's Foreign Relations Minister, Mr. Lamoli, talking about this, that right now he would like to see inter-trade in the South African development region go up to 50% from the current roughly 20% that it is at the moment. And so Tanzania, through its foreign ministry, is putting forward an agenda that the countries in Southern Africa should focus on key infrastructure projects. For example, itself has been focusing on its standard gauge railway, which now is getting into its 6th and 7th sections, worth now billions of dollars, which it believes will not only benefit the country but also the region as well.
So this is the whole theme around trade over aid there, Isaac. But along the way, there are certain issues, I suppose, that need to be dealt with. To what extent has the issue of management of migration resonated in Tanzania, and how much of an agenda item is it for that country? For the SADC summit, and I suppose later on when we're talking about the AU summit.
Well, in terms of migration, from what we've been hearing in the various statements, Tanzania hasn't been very vocal when it comes to the issue of migration as compared to other African countries that had been, for example, affected by what had been going on in South Africa, the exit of many migrants that had come to South Africa. Tanzania itself had some migrants from the country come back into the country, but didn't issue much of a statement. It just told us that there are people there that wanted to come back home, and by and large understood the situation that South Africans were in, and mostly called for dialogue in that regard. So it hasn't come up as much of an agenda, but historically Tanzania has been open to the idea of the intermingling of Africans as a whole, and Pan-Africanism, being a champion of that, being very involved in the anti-colonial movement, and in the case of South Africa, fighting against apartheid. So it has very much welcomed people from different places in the region for the prospect, one, building political bridges, but also now economic bridges. And it believes that the way forward right now is to focus on building economic relations, and with that will come the socioeconomic benefits. So migration as a whole hasn't come up as a big part of its as agenda, but rather focusing on building economic ties within the region, especially the Southern African region.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this evening. That's Isaac Lukando, live for us from Tanzania.